Hello everybody and welcome to today's FF Virtual Arena. Today we're going to be, I don't know if anyone's ever heard of this out there, but we're going to be looking at this new technology that's been, it's pretty radical, it's pretty extreme. It's called the cloud. Now this has proven to be quite an effective way of, well, pushing forward innovation. I'm going to get into this because there's so much about this that is often overlooked because it's such a buzz topic at the moment. Joining me to discuss cloud technology, first of all, we have Bill Faris from ACI Worldwide. Bill, how are you doing today? Whereabouts in the world are you?
I'm doing very well, thanks. I'm actually based in the US, in the Atlanta area.
In the Atlanta area, a lot of fintech happening in Atlanta at the moment.
There is, yeah. It's certainly one of the big hubs in the US. I've been down here for a bit, but my background has had me both in the US and Canada throughout my career.
Excellent. Shout out to our friend Andrew Morris, who runs several fintech events out in Atlanta. Graham, whereabouts in the world are you?
I'm in Dublin, in Ireland at the moment, Ali.
Excellent. Well, I just want to kind of do a bit of sort of introductions into this. First of all, Graham, can you just tell us a little bit about, well, what is it that you look after at AIB, and why is the cloud such an important aspect of this?
Yeah, I'm very happy to give you an overview of that. I'm the Director of Enterprise Technology and Cloud Engineering. So it's probably four key aspects to my role, and cloud touches every one of them. So from the service and operations that runs the whole technology operation 24/7, through to the infrastructure that we utilize to bring our services to market, the enterprise applications that our colleagues consume to do the business of the bank, and the technologies, the ecosystem of technologies that our developers utilize to, from a software perspective, help develop those products. So cloud touches every aspect of that in some shape or form. So for me, if you go back probably 5 years ago, cloud, you were saying that cloud was the buzzword, and it was back then, I think, because the marketing hype around it. But I actually genuinely feel there's a buzz around cloud right now. I think partly because off the back of COVID, people have seen the promise of cloud fulfilled. And now as we push on more aggressively with that digital transformation globally, I think the real benefits of cloud are becoming obvious. So I think there's a buzz around it now, but it's for a different reason than maybe 5 years ago.
Excellent. I'm glad you brought up the pandemic there, because we will touch base into that in terms of payments and the cloud there. But speaking of payments, and I'm actually going to, knowing that you're based in Atlanta, I'm going to take a quick strategic sip of Coca-Cola.
Yeah, there you go.
Bill, tell us a little bit about yourself and your relationship at ACI Worldwide to the cloud.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. So my role at ACI, Ali, is the head of the acquiring product line. And so ACI is providing, real-time mission-critical payment solutions for banks and intermediaries, for merchants and for billers. And so across a variety of segments, and frankly, across all of those segments, not only is our organization's cloud transformation kind of progressing really well, but our clients obviously are really looking for our support at helping them through their cloud transformation journeys as well, pushing for agility and adaptability in their solutions.
I think agility again is the key word there, because I want to go to the pandemic, because it's a cliche, but for a very big reason. Massive disruption, especially into the whole e-commerce and payments channel. What changed because of the pandemic when it comes to e-commerce and payments? Graham, do you want to take this first?
Yeah, I think just first of all, from a human level, just out of basic necessity, human behavior, we had to operate in a certain way to do our daily kind of activities, in a slightly more modified way, whether you couldn't travel and you had to rely more on e-commerce activities. Equally, when you had to still go into a bricks and mortar establishment, contactless became really important in that regard. So I think at the heart of it, like most things from a human perspective, when you have to adapt and change out of necessity, you do that. So I think I don't think necessarily the payments systems changed in any way overnight. I think a lot of the underlying infrastructure was there. What happened was very quickly the utilization of those channels increased. Now that increase has created a wave of further possibilities and opportunities that now people are seizing upon. So maybe we will see further change and adoption there. But I think overnight, it was an increase in utilization of a foundation that had already been established, would be my perspective.
Fantastic. But Bill, can I get you in on this?
Sure. Yeah, I would agree with Graham's points there. So as an example, in the UK, when retail physical stores were required to shut down during some of the lockdowns, through ACI's data, we saw a 300% increase during that period of time in e-commerce. Obviously there's always multiple things going on, but a significant part of that is that the physical locations just weren't allowed to stay open during that period of time. But I also see, and we also see more long-term sustainable kind of changes going on. Like let me use restaurant takeout as a stress testing example. 5 years ago, it was probably pretty common for me when I'm going to go get some takeout for the family for dinner. I'd go show up at a restaurant, I'd order from their menu, I'd pay with my card through a terminal, I'd wait for my food, and then I'd bring it home. These days, I'm ordering through a mobile app, I'm ordering on their website, I might be calling them, giving my credit card number over the phone. And when I show up, I'm just picking up my food and leaving, right? So there's a lot of different use cases that have changed, and the flow of how merchants are taking both the order and also the payment from their customers that I think have sustained it. And these changes are gonna stay with us long term.
Absolutely. We were actually speaking the other day to DBS over in ASEAN, and they were talking about how that the average amount per transaction for e-commerce had dropped hugely, but the number had almost kind of pivoted like that. So there's again, there needs to be that level of resilience and stability. I think the expression was that if a process is working 99.999% of the time, frankly, for this kind of critical infrastructure, that's not good enough. It needs to be 100%. So, Bill, can we just expand around how that resilience of systems, that scalability of cloud systems, how is that now a KPI for enterprises, both large and small?
So I would say, resilience and stability, these are, in today's world, table stakes, right? These are must-haves, high availability. This is critical infrastructure for our clients, both for banks and acquirers, and also for merchants, large merchants that are relying on that infrastructure. But I would add, also agility is a really key factor in today's world. There are new, acquirers are changing the way, creating new payment experiences for customers to react to our, fast changing environment. And without, a good base of agility, then it's very difficult to actually deliver these experiences as quickly as the market wants them. So obviously, cloud transformation makes all of that a lot easier. If done well, you can minimize the amount of resources that you're having to spend in order to deliver these new experiences.
Yeah, certainly agree with that.
On that note, Graham, I wanted to kind of quiz about some of your customers in terms of resilience and scalability, because taking restaurants as a good example, during the pandemic, probably cut down on the amount of cash coming in, but then probably also having a lot more investing in, payment terminals, online payments, having to kind of deal with that. What did that mean for you guys in terms of the back end? You suddenly have what was a very physical process for a particular industry now almost going entirely digital.
Yeah, I think, it goes back a little bit to my point earlier on. It's, first of all, the kind of the rails were established there, and I suppose the question of, did you have the capacity overnight to pivot to it? Because this change for us, at least, I'm sure the experiences globally where it may have been a little bit different, but from an Irish perspective, overnight it was flicking a switch. We had to, people went off site working from home. It all happened very quickly. So you didn't have a huge opportunity to build out whole new infrastructure around this. It was, have you got infrastructure right now that you can scale and is dimensioned to meet the demand? So we were in a good position to do that. And if I just pick up for a moment on those 2 points around KPIs, resilience and scaling, just in the cloud in general, no matter what part of the payment system or other parts of financial services might be used in, they are 2 key KPIs. I think they're the 2 probably most fundamental promises of just the cloud piece, that kind of inherent fault resilience. And I think when there's more dependence on the payment system, etc., it needs to be even more reliable, right? Not that people would have accepted a huge degree of, issues with it in the past, but there's even more reliance on it there now. And the scaling piece, the auto scaling piece, is a key aspect of cloud. So I think those 2 items will be key KPIs going forward. But as Bill mentioned there, I do think agility, delivering new features at pace, onboarding even more customers, that agility has to be, whatever way you measure it, is going to be a KPI, or there might be multiple aspects to it. That, because the other 2 are kind of cloud in and of themselves, the agility piece starts to branch out into the business benefit of cloud, and I think that has to be part of the conversation.
When you mentioned about that auto scale element, I mean, at the time, all of a sudden, businesses all over the world were looking to scale up their data centers, their cloud capabilities.
Yeah.
Because there is that kind of misconception that no matter what Dropbox tells me, I'm aware that there is not an infinite amount of space. Was there any issues with a sudden huge surge in demand? Did prices skyrocket, at which point the auto scaling doesn't become as sustainable?
No, actually, funny, we cast our minds back to the first probably 2 weeks of COVID, and people were saying, and I'm not talking about the I'd certainly say in the payment space, in our kind of core services, we didn't have these issues. But if you take even just general conferencing, something like conferencing, where all of a sudden everybody converged on needing to increase conferencing services, just as a way of maybe explaining that auto scaling. And people say, oh, there was a problem with accessing the cloud service. Actually, it wasn't really the cloud service in many instances. It was the network access and the network capacity that you had to access that. Because a lot of those cloud services are built on Amazon or Azure or whatever. There was plenty of capacity there to tune them up. It was actually getting people to that service. And that brings in, when you are actually building out, especially in the public cloud, that kind of footprint, you have to get the fundamental foundations of it right from a security perspective, from a network point of view. They were the things that were probably more challenging in the early days of COVID. So that's just something, I suppose, a lesson from the front line of these things that can't be overlooked. But I think the auto scaling piece, whether you're on a private cloud, on-premise, or in the cloud, I don't think that was or would have been your major concern.
Bill, from your perspective, auto scaling is one of the key things that is pretty phenomenal about the cloud, and it's pretty academic. What from your, was there any kind of restrictions from your perspective?
Yeah, I think, when you look these days, the challenges that have existed, that have been around for a while now with the global supply chain shortage, frankly, are driving spikes that are very sudden and very quick, and the environment and the infrastructure that's processing, payments in our case has to be ready to handle those spikes. So if you've tried to buy a video game system in the last year and a half, you're probably frustrated, right? Because both the major suppliers launched new platforms, close to a year and a half ago, maybe a year and a quarter ago. And to this day, most of those are still out of stock. So you get, a retailer or a merchant gets in a limited supply and probably sells out in seconds compared to their normal, transaction patterns. So being in an environment that allows quick and rapid acceleration of capacity is just critical in that environment in today's world.
Let's I want to draw a line under the first kind of initial outbreak of COVID where everyone was on Zoom. I kind of want to draw a line under that, but then look at what legacy that environment has created. And I want to kind of put forward Black Friday, because it used to be Black Friday. I mean, especially Bill in the US, you see some incredible scenes, some very meme-worthy scenes of people just queuing up for weeks at a time. That's now all online. One thing that hasn't changed in the last 19 months, it is Black Friday. How can cloud tech enable organizations to really scale both up and down constantly to meet those kind of traffic demands? Again, tying in with what you were talking about with the PS5. Bill, how does that work from your end?
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly the spikes, the traditional spikes in volume. Black Friday is a great semi-global example. Cyber Monday, Singles Day in China, Amazon Prime Day, another good example of that, right? So these demand generation spikes are continuing to evolve and grow. So the spikes are growing. So when we looked at our data after Prime Day, as an example, in 2021, we saw an 18% year-over-year growth just in the Prime Day spike that occurred 2021 versus 2020. So these examples, there are new ones that will crop up. You'll see shifting between them, but it's just really critical for the infrastructure around payment processing to be able to handle that. In addition to some of the shorter term sudden spikes, whether it's tickets to an event or a hot product that gets launched or becomes available. All of these are just really critical moments for the merchants, and so therefore the infrastructure and cloud just provides that underpinning infrastructure that makes it significantly more efficient and easier to scale to meet the demand.
Yeah, I suppose with those moments as well, a lot of the time, because as you said, it's not just Black Friday, it's also for example, when there's changes in travel restrictions around the world, a bit of a surge on travel websites. Graham, can I get your sort of thoughts in these sudden surges?
Yeah, that term, is it VUCA? Volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. I keep hearing that term over the last 12 months. So that's the world we're living in. So at least with Black Friday, you can see a point on the horizon. The date when it's coming. There's other events, as you said there, where you don't see them coming. You might have less than 24 hours notice to respond, whatever might be generating that. So I think, whilst COVID was a health crisis, it's largely been an infrastructure driven response to that crisis. You imagine if we had this 20 years ago, people wouldn't have been able to go home and work from home at the scale we have, or we wouldn't have been able to scale our digital channels in that way. So infrastructure has played a massive role and will continue to play a massive role in how we handle that uncertainty and surge in demands going forward. But at the end of the day as well, we're all running businesses. So in the old world, when you were dimensioning infrastructure, sometimes you had to size it for the peak of what might come twice a year, which you might have been paying all year long for having the pleasure of maintaining that peak. We have to be much more efficient in that. So it's not just about scaling up. It's actually the times of the year where demand is very low and that you're not paying any more for that than you need to be. So the scaling up and scaling down, the scaling down tends not to be as active part of that conversation, but that's just as much interest, particularly when you've got significant growth on those channels. The peak is going to be even higher, so there might be a bigger gap between that and the floor. So you just need to be able to have that kind of scalability both ways in the conversation.
At AIB, I imagine that compared to certain other organisations across the British Isles, that you must have been sat quite almost quite smug of how well your cloud infrastructure stood up over that particular time there. What's the transformation process like? Because it's not as simple as just sprinkle a bit of cloud on that. What was it actually like moving from that kind of mainframe based into quite a cloud-based system? Yeah,
so I wouldn't say we were ever sitting in a smug position on anything, right? I would say from our perspective, we were in quite an assured position, given the way we've invested in our technology estate over the last number of years. And in a bank such as AIB, like many banks globally, you have to, you've got the very latest cloud technology, but you've also got a very significant part of your traditional estate that you're constantly maintaining and evolving and developing over time. So you've got to be able to fuse both of those worlds together, and that's just a reality for us. So we were very proud of the team and what the work that we've done over the last number of years to get there. And I suppose as we kind of look forward now, we're able to see the development work we've done in the cloud in the last 3 years and the automation benefits and the empowerment. Like, cloud brings a significant empowerment for our development community. So we're able to kind of, rather than them waiting for the infrastructure teams to go and provision a server, they're now able to self-serve. So it's really important for our developers who are at the heart of our transformation to have that kind of empowerment. That's a key benefit. The automation efficiency that we're able to achieve. And then all of that has to add up to delivering a better customer experience and to be able to bring features out on a much more regular basis, particularly at the point of digitalization that we're at right now, where people have seen what's possible during COVID, and now there's an ambition to push on.
I think I spoke a while back with Fergal Coburn, and one of the things that he pointed out was it's also that the opportunity of those savings made on things like cloud infrastructure, the opportunity on those savings, you could either just kind of keep it in there or you can invest it back into technology. And that's one of the things that I know that you guys have been quite adamant on, to reinvest those savings back into your technology.
Yeah. Well, I think it goes back to your point about how did you feel about, the first week or two of COVID. There was some people who I'm sure, had some significant challenges to deal with. I mean, everybody had challenges of some nature, but I think the heart of our infrastructure was sitting there very solid. But you know what? You can never rest and feel, you've got there and you've achieved. It's an ongoing effort. So it requires continuous focus, ambition, investment to continue pushing on. And particularly from a cloud perspective, I think there's an awful lot more we will be doing in this space going forward, because we see the potential of it. We've done a lot, but always more to do.
Bill, you guys at ACI, I mean, you work with banks literally all over the world. What's been from your perspective, what's it been like looking at some of the various transformation processes when it comes to the cloud? Has some of them been relatively seamless, and what in terms of just the general banking infrastructure, how was it in terms of, was a lot of it ready for such a pandemic?
It's to your point, we're operating in markets around the world, and frankly, each experience is a bit different. But what we find, and what I always find, is that it's really important to kind of start out with the right plan, right? If you're taking a legacy application and infrastructure and redesigning that and migrating that to a cloud, there's a number of things you have to really explicitly plan for. Data migration, the data is not going to look the same way when you implement it in a cloud service. You frequently have to take legacy applications and decompose them, if I can use that phrase, into microservices or smaller, more agile, pieces of code. If you're going to plan a cloud transformation, it shouldn't just be about shifting what already exists in your legacy application up into the cloud. You should have a roadmap for new functionality, right? Because if you're not getting more from your cloud-enabled solution, then you're losing an opportunity. And so your plan should always have a roadmap for new functionality. And then also, more on a practical level, an evaluation of the people that you have that are currently working on your legacy application. Do you have the right skill sets in the team? Do you need to augment that? Do you need to retrain and spend some time with the people involved? So, without dealing with all of those points in a plan, those, in my view and in our view, kind of set up for some success. We launched in 2021, we launched a program to help some of our banks and acquirers in the Latin America market to expedite their cloud transformation with acquiring. We launched a program called Fast Start Acquiring last year. As we implemented that in a couple of markets in Latin America last year, we had clients that used to be on somewhere between an 8 to 12 month cycle to stand up a new implementation, from contract signing with us until getting ready for payment scheme certification. So we were able to compress that down to less than 100 days for those clients. So obviously, as an acquirer is going to use our Fast Start Acquiring program as one of the vehicles to help them with their cloud transformation journey, that allows them to get to revenue sooner and reduce costs along the way.
What role will acquirers play in the future with merchants who are adopting that multi-acquirer strategy and working with multiple people?
Yeah, sure. So in 2021, we actually did a study with Edgar Dunn and Company of large global merchants on the topic of multi-acquirer. And the respondents in the study, more than half of the respondents in the study reported already using multiple acquirers in their payment processing needs. And they're doing that for several reasons, several legitimate reasons. They need to protect themselves for resilience, right? So if any acquirer can have an unexpected event and create some downtime, so it helps them to have multiple acquirers at play to be able to not be a victim of unexpected downtime that your provider's having. It's also, the merchants reported having improved access to alternative payment methods, right? So local payment methods in markets, by using multiple acquirers, they were able to expand the options that they were giving to their customers. And then increased sales was the third area of benefit that the merchants focused on. And more importantly, kind of increased conversion rates from their online sales. So sometimes running an authorization from one acquirer to another, they were able to optimize for acceptance rates across those. So, I think multi-acquirer, in my viewpoint, the merchants have spoken, and it's an important element for large merchants. And I think most acquirers, frankly, they want to be a part of that solution and help the merchants optimize for payment acceptance.
On a very local level, I adore, I'm sure the team could find a photograph, I adore in Singapore, best example, when you go into a shop, or certainly used to, and there's 10, 15 different payment terminals, all with different But that's that very kind of sort of localization that you want to have whatever points and whatever cashback you get from there. So moving on to the cloud and working with different third parties, what does that enable for new fintechs to want to work with the likes of AIB? Does it give you that opportunity to create sandboxes in a lot more efficient way?
Yeah, I think in terms of just cloud from a development perspective, that's where you're going. Yeah. I think, having, I suppose a platform, and as we said earlier on, cloud native approaches are very much, set up to enable and foster innovation and collaboration, right? And the fact that they're sitting in the cloud, in the public cloud, in many cases, or whether on premise, I suppose they're more accessible for that kind of collaborative experience, right? So I think it's an important part if you're kind of developing an overall ecosystem of organizations to engage with. That public cloud platform is going to be a key part to enabling that to happen.
Absolutely. Well, guys, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. Whenever I do these recordings, I'm always sort of thinking in the back of my head, if I'm watching this, watch the moment where I'll take that quote and sort of tweet that out. And there were several bits around there. I mean, the auto scaling thing is something that's definitely going to stick in the back of my noggin. Graham, where's the best place to reach out to yourself? Are you on the TikTok?
No. No.
LinkedIn?
Yeah, LinkedIn.
Excellent. Bill, where is best to find out about yourself?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. LinkedIn, feel free to reach out via LinkedIn. Also, our website at aciworldwide.com, you can submit any inquiries through there as well.
Perfect, excellent. I am at Ali Paterson everywhere. Thank you so much for listening to us today. Bye for now.